said that the only way she would change the village board meeting, she would stand up there and smile a lot, and hopefully people would smile back at her. I don't think so.
We ask once again that you be community friendly. It seems to work in the year 2003. We know that sometimes we may not agree with questions and comments from the floor, and that's okay. That's what this is all about. That's what democracy is all about. I ask you to be cordial. I ask you not to make personal attacks on any individual, but you are free to approach any member of the board at any point in time outside this session, or the manager's office, or you can set up an appointment with myself on any given time. So with that, if I may ask the village clerk to call.
Don DeBar.
Do I have to say my name and address? Are we doing that or what?
Please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don DeBar, 87 Ferris Place, and 2 or 3 times for the other times I spoke, because I didn't do it before. Happy New Year to everybody.
Also to you and your family.
Thank you. Same. There's an article in the both the Poughkeepsie Journal today, today being the 6th of January, Tuesday, and also in the Middletown Times Herald Record. They're both on the internet. That deal with an issue between the town of New Paltz and the town of Lloyd, which adjoins it, which is Highland, across from Poughkeepsie. There has been some back and forth between these two towns, with New Paltz suing Lloyd because Lloyd allowed a supermarket that was going to impact on traffic in New Paltz, and they didn't feel like they were consulted in the environmental review process. And anyway, this whole history of this comes down to where Lloyd is now actively seeking and circulating a petition of annexation among a group of property owners whose properties currently lie in the town of New Paltz, and where if the statutory and constitutional requirements for annexation are met, the hope is to have a referendum among the property owners to annex this property into the town of Lloyd. The article in the Poughkeepsie Journal explores the legal requirements, the fundamental legal requirements, better than the one in the Times Herald Record, but they both make very clear reference to 2 facts. One, with respect to the requirements for a petition circulated by the residents and or property owners in the area according to the statute's requirements, and 2, for a referendum on annexation. The law is very clear in cases of annexation, by the way, and as I said, it's actually a matter of the New York State Constitution, which is also very clear. The reason that I bring this up is that it's background for something that is related to an issue that I've raised in the waterfront hearings a number of times, and which has been raised even by the village in the record over the last 25, 30, 35 years, actually. And that is the fact that the town of Mount Pleasant and Village of Ossining boundary line was, and in my humble opinion, is more or less at the westerly line of Water Street, and that the Village of Ossining's jurisdictional limits reach the westerly side of Water Street. Now, there were several attempts at remedying the situation, one in 1967 or 1968, which is referenced in one village planning document in 1977 that I read from at a public hearing a year or 2 ago. That was an attempt to annex the property into the Village of Ossining by a municipal home rule law, rather than by meeting the constitutional and legislative requirements of a referendum. The reason being that the property owners in the district were not inclined to vote to approve entry into the Village of Ossining, as the Constitution and the law and the state statute required. The second attempt was in 1979, 1980, which resulted in, I think it's 517 of the laws of 1980, if I remember correctly. I haven't looked at it in several months. The first effort was it was passed by the legislature and vetoed by Governor Rockefeller, who said the Constitution requires this, and so does the state law. No way. In 1980, Governor Hugh Carey did not agree and signed legislation, but nakedly on its face, the legislature lacked the authority for this legislation, and yet the village sought the legislation because it had a compelling interest in basically, fundamentally, skirting the Constitution and the municipal law, the state's municipal law. The reason I bring this up is that at the last meeting that I attended, I wasn't here at the 16th, but I was here on the 2nd of December. I asked, and apparently it wasn't clear, that I intended as a generic question, having nothing to do with any specific piece of real property in the Village of Ossining, if Corporation Council could let the community know the answer to a question which has been raised in a specific context, but in a general context. Can the Village of Ossining request a special home rule law from the New York State Legislature to conduct a referendum on the sale of village real property? Now, my reason for bringing the entire thing up is that there is a history of the village and town of Ossining looking beyond the constitutional authority granted to municipalities for treatment under municipal home rule laws, and this particular issue, there is no constitutional problem whatsoever. Towns have the authority to conduct referendum on the sale of real property. Other municipal agencies have the authority, so the Constitution doesn't bar it. It's just that it's an omission, perhaps an intended omission, but an omission in the state statute, and the municipal home rule law requests are intended for specific authorization in specific cases, like the sale of real property, any particular piece of real property, where the legislative body of the municipality decides, look, we think this is in the best interest of our community to conduct this in this particular way. Please, legislature, give us the authority to do this. The legislature generally grants these things because Sandy Galiff isn't going to vote against something Albany asks for unless it's outrageous, because, you know, when Albany is going to vote on what Sandy Galiff asks for, that's how they do things in the legislature, as you know. So they are generally routinely granted. My question very specifically and very simply is, within all of that context, if we could get an opinion from Corporation Council as to whether or not it is legal for the Village of Ossining, Village Board, or the Mayor, because I think the statute allows for both, to make a special home rule request from the state legislature for the authority to conduct a referendum on the sale of real property owned by the village.
Okay, Don, your question is very lengthy and it sounds very legal, but here's what I will tell you. It has been asked by me, it's been asked by the board, even with this Corporation Council and former Corporation Town Barnes, and I've even asked lawyers that I know that represent other communities as Corporation Council, that the villages, the town can have that referendum, the villages cannot. But most important that you have to understand is this board, all five of us, feel very comfortable, and I believe, we have a difference of opinion, but please allow me to say this. We believe that the modified project, as presented at the July 24th meeting, in combination with the proposed LADA being worked out between our special counsel and the proposed developer, is in the best interest of the community. I think that we have to take a step back and say, this board has to say that we don't want to take that course. We feel comfortable with the ongoing negotiations that is in process right now. So we don't feel that that would be the way to go unless we were looking for an exit strategy. This board collectively, are not looking for an exit strategy because this board, and any of the board members could either disagree with what I'm saying or share their time with you. we feel that moving forward under this modified proposal is in the best interest of the community. Now, you and I share a difference of opinion on that, and I will say once again, I know you may not like to hear this, but I think it's important that you and people that are associated with your feelings or your beliefs, or even part of what you call the Waterfront Alliance, have done a tremendous justice to this proposal, because if it wasn't for your efforts to, I guess, stall this project, if I may use the word stall this project, to allow this project to come about as proposed, we think it's a good compromise. I have told you this on a personal level, I've told you this on a public level, that I thank you, along with the hard work of this board and, of course, the lawyers involved. I will also share with the community, because it is kind of public right now, that I had shared a thought with this board, which they support, and I have approached Supervisor Trevokis with this, and I hope that at this point he has shared it with his board. And the proposal is that the Engle Park itself is owned by the town of Ossining, and it obviously lies in the Village of Ossining. So I asked Supervisor Trevokis that he needs a DPW site, and we have, so to speak, an extra site on Water Street, and if he would be willing to swap properties in the best interest of the greater Ossining community. In other words, that we have a DPW site on Water Street. They are looking for or need a DPW site, and we feel that we can better serve the greater Ossining community, maybe taking over that site. I don't know where he is at this point with his board, but we hope that, you know, we get some type of positive response regarding that. In other words,
Park, swapping the
Engle Park,
DPW for Engle Park?
Yeah, swapping Engle Park for our old DPW. Now, I don't know if people are laughing because they think it's funny.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
The expression,
let me just finish.
Go ahead.
So this is just a proposal because I think that having that park, and of course it would be retained as Engle Park in perpetuity, but the ownership will transfer. There's a lot of reasons I say this, because although it may be a little bit of more of a cost factor to the Village of Ossining residents and less of a cost factor to the town of Ossining and Briarcliff, because they share in that expense. I don't know if they use it, but they're still welcome to use it. I know that the town of Ossining is struggling with keeping their tax increase, you know, to I think maybe 17%. That will hopefully, you know, shift some of that cost within the village, but we're already in the, we do a pretty good job in the Parks and Recreation Department anyway. So these are some of the thoughts that I'm sharing with you to know you, to let you know that, you know, there is a possibility of this happening, or there's a possibility of it not happening, but the thought is out there.
Okay, so can I finish?
Yes, you may.
Okay, thanks.
Sure, go right ahead.
Don, I've heard you make these presentations before in terms of the property that may fall within the town of Mount Pleasant and so forth. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, all of that, you know, needs to be tested in a court of law as to see, you know, whether or not, you know, that is your position, in fact, prevails on that. I really, you know, I really don't know. It's beyond my poor powers of deduction to legal knowledge, so I won't comment on that. However, I do want to say that this past election, 2 trustees ran on this project and supported this project, and as you know, I have supported it since the beginning, and I have been elected 3 times. And this last time, it was we got a resounding vote from the community to the effect that they in fact approve this. My literature and my colleagues' literature stated very clearly that we support the development, the waterfront development project. And so I think that we have in fact had a referendum, if you will, several times with regard to development on the waterfront project.
Okay. Just very quickly in response to that. You said exactly the same thing 2 years ago, which was the beginning of the year when Penny and everybody who were running on the project were tossed out like 2-1. And the project didn't change in the interim there, first. Secondly, the candidates who were running against you this year were constrained by their party to not discuss the issue until late October. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Let's
Let me go back to my point, because I was actually making a presentation when you...
Here's what I'd like to end this, because I really don't...
John, I wasn't finished with my presentation when you started talking before. I just have something else.
Well, I thought you laid your paper down, removed your glasses,
No, I didn't.
stepped back.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I didn't, because you were kind of bubbly and I was just giving you some space. But I
Well,
had 10 seconds or something, that's
Okay,
all I need.
But let me just say, Don, look, here's the most important part. Removing the politics, who's a Republican, who's a Democrat, and who won, who lost, and stuff like that. This sitting board, which is a combination of all parties, supports the proposed modified project. That's what's important, not so much what party you're affiliated with and where you stand on it. We feel comfortable at this point.
It's important to you, not to me, and I'm in the middle of making a presentation, which I'd like to finish.
With that, if I may ask you to just hold 1 minute while they change the tape.
Okay.
Oh, you're okay?
I just have one quick comment.
Go right ahead.
It's not about the last election, but
Okay.
I'm going to kind of agree with you, but with a little caveat. And certainly, you and I have had our differences of opinion about the riverfront, and you know where I stand, and I think the Waterfront Alliance knows what my belief is on what I believe that the riverfront can do for Ossining as a positive, not necessarily a negative. Beyond that, though, I have a question for probably corporate counsel as to how lengthy it would be to get a ruling, because I think that this issue comes up enough times by enough people, and I'm not even suggesting that I would support it, even if it came back the way Don says.
Right. I mean, look,
it has nothing to do with the town of Mount Pleasant. Just let me finish.
Okay.
But it does have to do with the thing about referendum and home rule.
That's what I'm talking about.
And certainly, I think that at some point we need to address this. As I said, I wouldn't agree with it. I wouldn't support doing it. But I think the question's been out there long enough that it deserves at least an answer from either Department of State or somehow to find out. I agree with the mayor. This corporation council, the past corporation council, our special counsel, both of them, both the prior one and this one, have all made their case and made their statements about referendums, and so I have a strong feeling that you may not be correct, but we need to finalize this somehow once and for all, and if that means getting something from the state, then so be it.
Okay. Well, before you continue, I want to just remind all of my colleagues that with all of the things that we're doing, and resolutions and legal jargon that needs to be prepared, I just want to make sure that our corporation counsel and the administration's time is best utilized in the issue of moving forward. And I do not disagree with my colleague about at some point getting a ruling. I just don't know what length of time and effort is involved in that. So if it's a matter of drafting a letter to a agency within the state of New York and waiting for a reply, I don't have a problem with that for an answer. But to spend a lot of time on an issue that this board feels comfortable with the proposed project, I just want to make sure that, we are utilizing everybody's time in the best way we possibly can. With that, Don.
And I agree. I mean, I'm not looking for anything labor-intensive.
All right.
Neither am I. I mean, it won't be labor-intensive. It's actually a very simple answer. And just for 1 second, in some sort of, discussion back and forth on that one point, The answers that were given by Tom Barnes and Michael Zarin to this question and the interpretations from Tom Cambereri were not on point. And in my opinion, and it's not to slander them or anything, it was deliberate, because the answer to the question that I'm asking, I know already, is yes.
Okay,
Okay,
include our
so-
special new counsel, too.
Yes,
Okay.
I don't think you need Dan Rysel to answer this question,
No,
but yes.
But I will tell you that I've asked this question, okay, and he feels the same way. So when you...
Okay, good.
when
Well,
you say
I haven't heard him say it, so I don't know what his answer
Tom
is.
Cambereri, Mayor Tom Cambereri, and Tom Barnes, and all of the people you mentioned,
Right.
you know, and Michael Zarin,
Yep.
I just want you to know that you can include our new special
Okay.
counsel.
My question has been always, can you seek the authority under MHRL? And they have always said there is no statutory authority. That is a predicate to my question. I know there's no statutory authority. My question is, can you obtain the statutory authority on a case-by-case basis? And my reading of the law for 2 years now, a lot of it, oh, here's another case, oh, here's another case, is the answer is yes. And in terms of getting a letter, you can get one from the comptroller or the AG's office or whatever.
Don, I think
Take some of the ones that exist already.
Not to interrupt again, but I think if we get a letter, no matter which way it goes, I think you can make an assumption, and I join you in trying to get an answer, whether you know it or not, and we don't, or whatever. But I think you could also assume, and I agree with the mayor on this, that you have 5 people here that are kind of committed to.
The answer is going to be
project.
won't have a
And
referendum
so-
instead of can't, and that's what I want to get to.
With that...
That will probably be the case.
We talk about a referendum. Why don't you just put this up for a referendum? The mayor has said several... The mayor has said several times that the referendum is in November, when we're re-elected to this office. Well, I will tell each and every one of you, if that's the referendum that you want, you will be out of office.
I hate to see that as elected officials, and I personally have to say that I voted for all of you, I feel a bit betrayed. And I think that you have a major responsibility to the people. After all, you do represent us. I think, just like John and just like everyone here tonight, it would probably behoove you as elected officials to put this out into a referendum. But again, I feel like I'm being a little bit repetitive, but that's okay. Because you know what? Whatever the feedback is, if it's positive in your favor to go forward, then by all means you proceed and you have the backing of the village or the community. But on the other hand, if you don't, that's not a good thing. And I think that you're putting yourself in a kind of scary situation.
I believe that this village board should put this to a referendum, and a referendum should say only one thing. Do you support the sale of 4.2 acres to a private developer, and see how that comes back? Because that's what I would do. Thank you.
You know, I grew up in Scarsdale, and when all this came up, I was trying to figure out, why did I come to Ossining? And you know why? We had a boat. It was the water. It was the water, and I felt so stupid that I did not get involved in this more as far as speaking up. If I may just end with a song, also. Let me just take words from a very famous song in my ethnic background. I had 4 green fields. Each one was a jewel. But strangers came and tried to take them from me. Thank you.
Hush, little baby, now Fortune was a thing that money could buy. The rich would live and the poor would die. All my trials, Lord, soon be over. Too late, my brother, too late, but never mind. All my trials, Lord, soon be over. There is a tree in paradise, the pilgrims call it the tree of life. All my trials, Lord, soon be over.
Laura Saffer appeared in the City of Kingston and sat on a panel giving a presentation to the City of Kingston on the task force on youth and recreation. The community was, if you look at some of the other communities around, what they provide as far as recreational services, I think ours surpasses that. If you looked at the last brochure that was sent out, the brochure this particular time was 28 pages long. Also included inside cover sheets for the farmers market and the summer concert series to be held down at the waterfront park. And the summer concert series to be held down at the waterfront park. And the summer concert series to be held down at the waterfront park. And the summer concert series to be held down at the waterfront park. And the summer concert series to be held down at the waterfront park.
But by the same token, as many as 50 or 60 people that are here this evening, there are literally tens of thousands who are home, who are a silent majority. Who look at this
No.
Not one of them is here. I didn't interrupt you. I didn't interrupt you once. I interrupt you once. Let's show a little class.
I just want to finish making this point. The point is that they are bound to us, according to them, more than $2 million was in the newspaper. Okay? If you were to take a look at this process and how we got here, you realize that the biggest problem is we are now trying to do a project that was not what the RFP anticipated. And so we have this kind of, shotgun marriage at this point. But the shotgun is not pointed at us. We are not out of pocket $2 million or $2.5 million. We still have the land, and we have outs under the contract that we have.